Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
The World According to Elmer is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Crooked River Radio is an internet radio station that is live 24/7 playing top 40 hits from the 60s through the 80s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden, and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River. Welcome aboard. We're headed for the World According to Elmer, with hosts Gerry Sorenson and Pat Morrow. Don't worry, you'll enjoy it there. Better buckle in and enjoy the ride. Here come our hosts now.
Good evening, everyone. This is Gerry Sorenson, KG8RRY. And with us tonight, we have our Elmer, Pat Morrow, who is never ate, oh, quit partying, or something like that. N8OQP. Are you here, Pat?
Never gonna quit partying's more like
Never
it.
quit partying, baby. It's all good. How's your week been?
Oh, like a week.
Yeah.
I only had a week back. Oh, but when did you get a week back? About a week back.
Yeah. Yeah, what was that old song about Saturday night in Toledo, Ohio? I spent a week there one day.
Yeah, I've had them weeks.
I have too. It's been a great week in ham radio, though. The bands have been lively. Yesterday, the bands were fantastic. We had 20 meters open from the East Coast all the way into Europe. And we had some noise, but look, this is Ohio. Now, one of the good things that happens at a bad time of the year, at least a bad time of the year for me, because I'm not a wintertime guy at all. I don't know how I got stuck in this state, but here I am. But one thing we can expect is the fall wearies, and we get towards winter, is we can expect our noise floor to fall. And when the noise floor falls, you'll hear people you haven't heard since last fall. And that's always an exciting thing in ham radio. So we got lots of good times coming up here, Pat.
Yeah, usually this time of now through about Thanksgiving's probably going to be the better time of the year for a lot of it. I know
Yes,
right before the sun cycles bottomed out last time, September through November, probably Thanksgiving-ish, was probably the best there ever was for 10 meters. I was talking all over the world on 10.
Nice.
And it was.
We have seen signs, little hints, little signs of 10 meters coming back to life, and that's.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming.
They say 2.5 more years, and we will be in the height of the cycle, and we'll be living the dream.
You're actually starting to see
all
that
around the world. All the world will be ours, Pat. Ours.
You're actually starting to see that on the sunspots and that. A lot of it. There's been a lot of activity on the. As far as the sun goes, a lot of sunspots that actually, that's what actually affects a lot of the propagation, especially in the middle bands. Is the fact that the sunspots and that help, it helps ionize the atmosphere and that, and then when that happens, that's when you get the best of the bouncing and everything like that.
You remember the early 1970s? The early 1970s, I wasn't in ham radio yet, but I was a CBer, and that was back during the time before the CB craze, when it became popular. That was back when people used call signs, and they actually behaved themselves on the air. And there were certain words they wouldn't use back in those days, because if you did use those words, your neighbors would report you to the FCC. So it was a whole different CB back in those days, but I can remember being on, well, I had a 4-watt radio. I can remember I might have had another piece of equipment that went with it, but I'm not certain about that, and I'm quite sure the statute of limitations has run out on all that stuff. But it seems to me that I talked the world on CB back in about 1970.
4 watts out, or 4 watts out of the radio, 1,500 watts out of this other thing.
Well, I don't think it was quite that much. You got to remember, I was a kid back then. I mean, there was no You know, there was no access to things like that, and there was no internet back in those days. So you had to know somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody that worked in another town that had a radio shop, a CB radio shop, and you'd be surprised what you could get your hands on.
Yeah, back in that day, I was coming up as a electronics entrepreneur, I guess you could call it. And I did my studying on that stuff, and I found out that there was these little things called return circuits for modulation clipping. And if you took and got the circuit, or if you got that out, all you had to do is go to that little modulation transistor and look and see where that went, and take a little needle nose pliers, or wire clippers, and just clip that center of that transistor, and man, you wouldn't believe how that audio would come.
Isn't that incredible?
And we used to talk further on that than you could with probably 200-300 watts. You were louder.
I don't have one here, but if I had one sitting here, I would hold up a magic screwdriver for you.
But yeah, those were the days. That was a lot of fun back then.
It was a lot of fun back then, and the tube rigs were great, even for CB. They make a great, I'm a Swan guy, and I have an all-tube station here at the house, all Swan tube radios. And Swan had another company, actually, that the gentleman that owned Swan was a guy by the name of Herb Johnson. And Herb was involved, he was an entrepreneur, trust me, and he was involved in some other different things, companies. Atlas was one of them, some other radio manufacturers, and one of them was a company called Siltronics, and they made a radio called a 1011. And what was significant about the 1011 is it worked on 10 meters, and it also worked on 11 meters, and it's a 100-watt radio.
Yep.
It didn't go over very well with the ARRL.
I would imagine
That's all I can tell you about that.
I would imagine it probably went higher than 28.3 too.
Well, back in those days, it wasn't digitally tuned. Does that tell you the answer you need to know?
That pretty much.
We have a dial on these radios. We don't have any kind of crystals involved. We have no digital tuning. So
that was the thing about some of them circuit boards back then. You had that 858 chip. That was my favorite, all-time favorite chip. Because all you had to do is take and put a little get two or three switches, put them on a little board, or on mount them on something, then take the wires and jump that chip all over the place. There ain't no telling where you could go with that thing. And it was,
you know what? This is not a good program.
Yeah, that's probably true. But
we're teaching young people right now to do something they should never do.
This is something you don't try at home.
That's right. That we're professionals.
And
don't try this at home.
Considering the topics that we've got tonight, I'm really looking forward to this. But first, Gerry, let me ask you a question. Gerry,
yes, sir?
Do you have any QSL cards today?
It is funny you asked that question. Why, yes, I do. I have some QSL cards, and I picked some out of the stack, so trust me, I'm not going to go through all of them. I won't bore you, but I have my spectacles on so I can see them now. Here's a little card that came in from Virginia this week, and this is a pre-printed card from Springfield. In fact, there's several cards this week from Virginia. That was a good state for my station this week, or a few weeks ago. This is KN4ZMA, and let me tell you about this contact. This was a CW contact, and that is a mouthful in CW.
I just made an FTA contact with him just this afternoon.
Really?
At ZMA, yeah, I know that call. In fact, I'm about to send him up to the logbook of the world. Yes, that is
a small world.
That's the exact call. Yep.
Yeah. Well, he's a good guy, and I enjoyed the conversation with him. So if he's listening tonight, thank you. This will not go down in the record books as my longest contact ever. I was on during a contest one night, and I heard this station, KS7 KCC, and I thought, I wonder who these people are. And I mean, he was coming in at about 20 over, here to my station, and I thought, boy, this station can't be very far. Well, it was the Eastern Ohio CW Amateur Radio Club in Lisbon, Ohio.
Wow.
So there you go. We got a QSL within our own state. In fact, he's probably, as the crow flies, 30 miles away from my residence here. So this one here, that's not going to go down as my longest contact ever, trust me. K4WNY. And when I first talked to this guy, I thought, boy, he's got to be in New York, right?
I would
WNY.
think. But the
it
four,
seems to me that the computer software for Field Day has WNY and ENY as two different zones, Western New York and Eastern New York. But this gentleman is actually down in Tennessee. But K4WNY, and by the way, that is a great call sign for Morse code. And this one here, this is a homemade card. You know, I started out with homemade cards, and I like homemade cards. They're special. This is KC 9IL, and I had a nice visit from him. I remember that he was running an ICOM. He's an ICOM guy like you are, Pat. He was running an ICOM, and I'm not familiar with this radio, a 7610. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. That's probably right before the 7300s and all that came out.
Okay, well, he's running the 7610, and he's got a G5RV, poor guy, and he's got that thing up at 45 feet, and it was doing the job for him. He came in very strong here. A couple more, then we'll wrap it up and get to our topic for tonight. This is a nice color card. I try to put a color card out there every week. This is K4GM, and he is from Culpeper, Virginia again. And this was a CW contact. He's a fellow SKCC member, and it was good to visit with him. He also was on a 7300 ICOM, and he has an inverted V that he was running. Very strong station here. This little homemade card is W7T from, and this would have been from Virginia, or excuse me, from West Virginia. I'll tell you more about that in a second. But this particular station was actually in Washington State, and I spoke to him on sideband during the contest. The contest was, and I'll get the big paper here for you, the world's largest teapot. There it is, the world's largest teapot in Chester, West Virginia. And this is, this actually, the teapot itself, do you remember a root beer called Hires Root Beer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, they actually made that. This was a prop of some kind. It was actually, at one time, it was just a big barrel, and it was supposed to be a barrel of root beer. And they added the spout on it, and they added the handle, and they made it into a teapot. I mean, what else but West Virginia, right? Who else would do that? And but anyway, it's the world's largest teapot, and they have a contest every year. And that little homemade card came from that particular contest. One more, and we're done here. And this one is N8KR, and he is from New Haven, Indiana. And he has a fine station. Talk to him on CW. He also is a fellow SKCC member, and was real pleasant to talk to. His name is Ken. So Ken, if you're out there, it was good to visit with you, and thank you for the QSL card. Keep sending those QSL cards. Those are very fine business, and they're well appreciated here at this QTH. With that, Mr. Pat, our Elmer, this, by the way, is The World According to Elmer, and we're on Crooked River Radio. Pat Elmer is our, Pat Morrow is our Elmer. I'm going to start calling you Pat Elmer now. And he is N8OQP. I'm Gerry, KG8RRY. This week we happened, I say we because I happened upon this and Pat happened upon this on a certain social media page that will remain unnamed. Let's put it that way.
Look at your screen.
And Pat has the thing up there, and I'll read it for you if you can't see it. This was from a gentleman by the name of Stephen. And I can say his name because he posted this on social media, so there's no right to privacy. on social media. Here's what he said. This was on October 2nd. He said, I just love people that start their sentences with so I monitor my radio quite a bit, and I hear people call that they're listening, monitoring, available for contact, etc. Now, that tells me, folks, that he's on 2 meters. That's because people don't call into HF and say, this is KG8RRY, and I'm just listening. No one does that. This is a 2-meter guy. He says, but I never reply, because, to be frank, he capitalized Frank, to be frank, I don't really have much to talk about. So I guess Frank has a lot to talk about.
Everybody wants to be Frank.
Doesn't have much to talk about. Now get this. He says, I'm not much of a conversationalist, and my hobbies probably aren't interesting to very many people who are into amateur radio. For example, I play 12 musical instruments. I love sci-fi, fantasy. He loves PC gaming, photography, mustache wax, beard oil, lock picking, soldering electronics, and incense. He's into incense, etc. He says, I have many and oftentimes random interests and hobbies. So my question is, for someone like me who isn't much of a talker and usually doesn't have a lot in common with other people, should I remain silent or reply to people looking for contacts? Because I feel bad when I don't reply to someone and nobody else replies to them either. But at the same time, I have nothing really to say. So that's the letter for that prompted tonight's topic here on The World According to Elmer. And I'm not entirely certain if Stephen is writing this from a position of sincerity or whether or not, I'm not certain, Pat, what his motivation was behind this particular post on a social media site, on a ham radio social media site. What were your first impressions when you saw this? I'm curious to know.
He actually got reamed pretty well by a lot of people. And it was like I think one of my responses to him was, you can, a lot of us just sit there at times and just listen, and, if there's a conversation going on, we won't bother it. But when it comes down to it, what the hell did you get in the radio for if it wasn't to talk? That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Myself, like I said, I've sat and listened. I did that almost all afternoon, and I've heard discussions. Are they coming to get you or what?
I think they're coming for me.
But I've had. I actually will take and eventually pick a microphone up and talk, especially if I hear somebody that sounds like they're having issues on the repeater or something like that. But it comes down to the fact that, are you in this just to have something to listen to, or are you in this to make friends and and expand the hobby as well as anybody else that actually does have something to talk about? The simple fact that you don't feel you have anything to give or to add or to actually talk about, that's chickening out. I wonder I wonder how long that guy's been in radio.
I don't know. The first thing I thought, well, there's an FT8 guy.
Oh, people have got to realize that there are people out there that this is one of the most diverse hobbies you'd ever want to get into. If you don't think there's anybody out there, if you don't think there's anybody out there that has anything in common with you, just key up and talk for a second. You'll be strangely amused. There's people that have got a lot more experience than you do, and there's people that's got a lot less. And they're all wanting to talk. Why don't you?
First of all, he has something in common with everyone that is on that radio. and that is radio.
It's got a
And
license.
radio people like to talk primarily about what? Radio. And and so we all share this common interest, no matter our background, no matter our ethnicity, where we're from, who our friends are. The one thing we all have in common is this is a big brotherhood in so much as we love radio. But my first job as a 14-year-old down in Missouri, couldn't do this today because of the environmental, not the EPA, the OSHA, but I was a darkroom technician, and then later a photographer at a little county newspaper down in Missouri. So he listed as two of his hobbies, photography was one, and so there we go. I play musical instruments. He plays musical instruments. You know, all the things that he listed weren't things that only a few people do. He mentioned that he likes sci-fi and he likes fantasy. Well, I like Star Trek. And so I think he would have more in common with other people than perhaps he thinks that he has, if this is actually a legitimate post.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know,
there it is.
There was, I've been enlightened on a couple of occasions about how diverse the hobby is. I never realized how many amateur radio operators are into trains. Big, little, and in between. I know I can probably show you 6 or 8 people just in and around my club that's into it. One guy sits down trackside all the time and takes pictures.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's something else.
Well, how many, I mean, we figure that we are 2% of the population. That's a lot of people, and a lot of people equals a lot of hobbies. Now, there may be some folks that are like Stephen, though, that have joined our program or listening this evening, or will listen later on a repeat. And perhaps you have been hesitant to pick the microphone up and to talk. There is such a thing as mic fright, which we can talk about at some time, maybe later in the show. But perhaps it's because you simply don't know how to make a QSO. And so we've got a gentleman that has been with us before this evening, and he's on videotape, and we're going to go ahead and roll that tape. And he's going to talk to us about how to make a QSO. And for the new folks that are with us, and our program is primarily designed for the new in the hobby, then watch this with interest. And for us old timers, you'll pick some things up and be reminded of some things that perhaps you have forgotten. So, Pat, if we can roll the tape, it would be awesome.
That's not Collins, the other one.
World According to Elmer on Crooked River Radio. I'm Gerry, that's Pat, and we will be back on the other side of our video.
Can you CQ? Maybe, maybe not. Hi, I'm Jim, W6LG. Well, that's a surprise. I'm surprised. So, I'm surprised by the amount. It's crap. And
I want to be understood. I'm a communicator, not a broadcaster.
Greetings. I'm Jim, W6LG, as you can tell by the call sign growing out of the back of my head.
Hi, I'm Jim, W6LG for Ham Radio Basics. Welcome to my radio room here on Wolf Mountain. Nothing's really more basic than calling CQ, and I hear it done often wrong and in a way that's probably not going to result in an answer. So I thought this would be a good time to talk about calling CQ. Let me give you an example of what I hear, and then we'll get into how to do it, or how I think you should do it. Oftentimes I'll hear somebody say CQ, CQ, KF6, SFS, CQ, CQ. And that's it. And a pause. And if you happen to tune across that guy, first of all, you're not going to know what his call sign is because it was KF6 SFS, and he didn't do it phonetically, and it is at Sierra Fox Sierra or Fox Sierra Fox or Sierra X-Ray Fox. Can't tell. So let's talk about some ways to call CQ where you are likely to get an answer, and let's also sort of set a time frame for doing it and a length of time to call CQ. There are, in my view, two types of CQ. One which is just sort of general. You're looking for anybody, anywhere. You don't need to say that, but you're just calling CQ. So you say CQ, CQ. There's also a directed CQ where you're looking for a specific area. You might be saying CQDX, which means to me you're looking for somebody that's not on your continent, but if you're in North America, maybe you're pointed at South America, or you're looking for Europe or Africa. You can also say CQ, CQDX Europe to make it really clear you're looking for Europe. If you tune across a guy who's calling CQDX Europe and you're in Canada, it's really not advisable to answer that guy because he's looking for Europe and you're in Canada. And it happens so often when I call CQ that if I'm looking for Europe because the band is open to Europe, 20 meters is open to Europe, then I'll get a guy in Kansas who calls me, and I think, well, okay, I've been saying Europe, you're in Kansas. Anyway, a lot of people have put up videos on how to call CQ, and some of them have said that CQ had nothing to do with seek you, and actually it does. In fact, some of the examples of how to call CQ on YouTube are just way wrong. One guy says you need to be on an even numbered frequency like 14202 or 7202. No, you can be anywhere. We have a neat thing called a VFO, and it can tune anywhere in between. Anywhere on the 20-meter phone band, for example, is fair game. So if you're calling CQ on 14268.5 or 0.68 or whatever, the guy that tuned you in or the gal that tuned you in needs to be able to tune to that frequency. You don't have to be on an even numbered frequency. CQ goes back to radio telegraphy days, and it had a French meaning, meaning an inquiry. I speak no French, don't understand it, can't give it to you, but if you Wikipedia it, you'll see that CQ really was an inquiry call, and it evolved. It was adopted by the United States, and it really did mean CQ, or a general inquiry call. In fact, I've got some plaques that are from the 1920s, and they're falling apart. This one is one that was hanging on the wall in a telegraphy office, and this one happens to have the Q signals on it. One that is overused by us a lot is QSL. I would encourage you not to use that one as much as you can. So here's Department of Commerce, Bureau of Navigation Radio Service, and it says General Inquiry Call, CQ. From, and again, it goes to the French language, which controlled a lot of the communications, DE, from, invitation to transmit or go ahead, K, and on it goes. And so a lot of the things that we're familiar with today are in here. Some are very different. Anyway, this was International Morse Code and Conventional Signals. List of abbreviations to be used in radio communications. And again, at this time there wasn't much in the way of voice communication, so these were used on code. I'm a big believer in plain language, and so in a subsequent episode we'll talk about emergency communications, and these are plaques that I have, awards I have won for participating in real emergencies where stuff went on. I'll read to you this one, which is one I'm most proud of. Whereas Jim Heath displayed extraordinary unselfishness and dedication to the welfare of Nevada County residents in performing above and beyond the call of duty and providing support to the firefighting efforts and in assisting the many residents who suffered losses. That was during the 49er fire in 1988 from the Board of Supervisors. Back to calling CQ. I'm going to call CQ. Let's see who we can raise. The way I call CQ is I want to do it for about 30 seconds to a minute and not any longer than that. But I'm going to say CQ, CQ, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf W6LG, and I'll say that a number of times so that someone listening, especially if it's in Europe, may not be hearing me all that well, and so he'll get the opportunity to get my call sign straight. In the past, I've had some really difficult calls like WB6JZC, and that one was a tough one, so I would repeat that several times. Also, when I call CQ today, I'm going to call just CQ, and I'll indicate which way my antennas are pointed. Because I'm not looking to go over the North Pole, it's not likely that's going to happen at this time of day. So there is a general CQ, and then there's a directed CQ where you're looking for a specific area. And repeat CQ, CQ several times. Give your call sign several times. Not in a row, but maybe CQ, CQ, W6LG, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf, CQ, CQ. Also, before you call CQ, and I almost forgot, ask if the frequency is in use. Somebody may be on there, but he may be listening, and he would hear you really, really well, and he may be in the middle of a contact, and you start calling CQ on top of him, he can no longer hear the guys talking to you. So I try to make it a rule to call CQ, to ask if the frequency is in use 3 times, just to make sure, and if somebody says it's in use, I'll move. That's why I've got a VFO. So ask if the frequency is in use, call CQ, and make it really clear when you complete your CQ call by saying W6LG listening or over, or just something so that if a guy in Europe who's maybe hearing you 4x5 knows that you're through calling CQ. And then in another episode, we'll talk about having a QSO with somebody and engaging that person in a conversation. If you want to have rapid fire contacts because you're at a national park or Route 66 or whatever, that's fine, and then you're 5'9" and you're on to the next one. But if you want to have a contact with somebody, an engagement conversation, ask them what kind of transceiver they're using or what their antenna is or where they are, any number of things. Try to avoid politics, and there's a reason for that. I'll do that in another episode. But you'd be surprised where it will lead, and sometimes it leads to really amazing contacts where you meet a guy who on the air turns out to live have lived in your hometown, or somebody maybe you knew, or in one case a relative. So where the contact leads can be really interesting. Some guys are really good at engaging a person in conversation. Let's go call CQ, see if we can find somebody, and we'll go from there. So give me just a minute to move things around, and we'll go on 20 meters. W6LG, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf, over.
All right, let's call CQ and see if we can raise. I'm going to do that on 20 meters. I'm going to ask if the frequency's in use first. I'm going to do that 3 times. If I don't hear anybody, then I'm going to go ahead and call CQ, and I'm going to be beaming east with 2 Yagis, and we'll see what happens. So here we go. Is the frequency in use? Is the frequency in use? Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. Is the frequency in use? Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. Is the frequency in use? Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. Is the frequency in use? Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. CQ low, CQ calling, CQ, beaming east from Northern California, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. Whiskey 6 Lima Golf calling, CQ low, CQ. CQ calling, CQ low, CQ. Beaming east from Northern California, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. Whiskey 6 Lima Golf calling, CQ, hello, CQ. CQ, you're on 20 meters, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. W6LG listening. I'll try that again. CQ, hello, CQ calling CQ. CQ, CQ, CQ calling CQ. Beaming east from Northern California, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. Whiskey 6 Lima Golf calling CQ, hello CQ. CQ, CQ. Beaming east from Northern California, Whiskey 6 Lima Golf. W6LG listening. I hear somebody calling, but you're in my noise. I'm sorry. No copy.
W6 Lima, not Juliet, but Gulf. Lima Gulf, W5IB.
Hey, how are you? W5IB, W6LG. How are you? My name is Jim. Over.
Well, hello, Jim. The name here is Jay. Juliet Alpha Yankee. We're located about 50 miles southeast of Dallas.
Yeah, you're really strong. You must have a Yagi or two pointed my way. You're like 20, 30 over. Go ahead.
I'm running a six-man, two-element hex beam pointed at you there. Go ahead.
Okay, you hit 40 over. Six-man, two-element hex beam. Well, it's working great. Big signal. I'm using two four-element Yagis on separate towers with phasing lines. Alecraft K3 and a homemade amplifier. It's hot here. How about where you are, Jay? Go ahead.
Well, for the first time in about 6 weeks, I can say the last 2 days have not been hot. We normally was like, for example, last Friday we were at 107. Today,
Okay, to complete this episode on calling CQ, I called CQ. A guy answered. He was a really nice guy. We had a great conversation. It lasted a lot longer than I put up on the video, but you can see where it went. There was a give and take. There was a sharing of information. We had a great time talking to each other, and it went on for a while. And in fact, subsequent emails were exchanged, and he's doing some research for me on something about a linear amplifier. So it's a guy that I'll hopefully come across again. He's really friendly, had a great sounding signal, and it was serendipitous, one of those things that happens, and that's part of the fun of ham radio. So call CQ, make it about 30 seconds, 45 seconds long. Give your call sign, indicate when you're listening, W6LG, listening for a call, and see who answers. And then you don't necessarily have to pick out the strongest one, but pick one that sounds interesting out of the group and engage that guy in a conversation. It's amazing where it goes. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've enjoyed this one. I enjoyed meeting the guy on 20 meters, and calling CQ for me is a lot of fun because it's kind of fishing. You're not sure what's going to be on the end of the hook, and sometimes it's just a great conversation. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I'm Jim W6LG. Call CQ. See who answers. 7-3.
And there he goes. That's Jim. And he called CQ. And you'll notice that the two topics that he talked about with the gentleman from Dallas, he started talking radio, number one, and then he went to the weather. Now, if Stephen is listening to this program, or if Stephen ever runs across this program, start with radio and move to weather. You'll always have somebody to talk to. That's good stuff.
How about that?
You got your mic. You ready
Did you see what
to call
he did?
CQ,
Did you see what he was using?
Yes.
It was that mic right there.
Yes, sir. That's a good one. It sounded good too.
That's called that's actually that microphone was actually manufactured in Conneaut, Ohio.
Really?
That's interesting. That's an Astatic. Astatic used to make a lot of the CB mics and that, and it was the Golden Eagles and all that. But that was actually they actually made an amateur. Oh, you got a Turner. That's sweet.
This is a Turner. This is what I use with the Swans. Beautiful mic.
Astatic made that for the it was called a 10DA head, which was a ceramic microphone they made for amateur radio. Very rare anymore. Astatic went out of business a long time ago, and you don't find very many of the microphones alone anymore.
You
that are
don't.
under about
That's true.
$100.
And then some of them were the old crystal microphones, and those are also hard to find. The problem with the crystal microphones is they used well, it's crystal, but their sending mechanism. The word escapes me at this moment, but at any rate, it dries out as the years go by, and
Yeah.
so the microphones have a very bad sound today.
But I used that up to about a year ago. I haven't used it recently.
Oh, that's a great mic.
I had a friend of mine over here and we did a net with it once, and people had no trouble at all hearing it. The nice part about it is it's an amplified mic, and if you just crack it, it's just loud enough for ham radio. Of course,
That's awesome.
with ham, you like any other mic, you can't overdrive it, where you'll splatter and everything like that. So. But
well, a couple of takeaways that I had from that gentleman's video, which was very well done. One thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to call CQ forever. That's one of the things that drives me to distraction, especially with new operators on CW. They will sit there and they'll repeat CW, CW, or CQ, 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 and then they'll give their call sign, and they'll do this ad nauseum. And there might be people waiting to talk to you. And if a person trails me out for 2 or 3 minutes while they're doing CQ, and then they just keep throwing their call sign out, I'll move on to another frequency. So there's a danger in repeatedly calling forever. Give the other person a chance to answer. The other takeaway that I had from that particular clip was our gentleman, Stephen, that was on 2 meters, doesn't want to call CQ. What should he do on 2 meters, Pat? He's got to have a different script for 2 meters.
As it was explained to me back when I was first getting licensed, if you're on a repeater, all you got to do is key up and say you're listening, monitoring, what have you, and you don't want to do that on. Of course, you don't want to do it on HF. But if you're on a repeater, I do that all the time myself. And it'll QP listening on key, and somebody's out there, I'll come back to you. If not, if you've not tied the repeater up or anything like that. As far as being on simplex, probably the same thing on 2. There's 2 and 440, and the anything above 6 is a lot. It's a lot more laid back than the HF bands and stuff like that, because number one, it doesn't go as far. I did want to make a comment about what you just said with the continuous CQing. A lot of times I use that against the operator, because what I'll do is I'll be sitting here in front of the computer, and while he's CQing, I look up his call sign to see if I've talked to him before or not, and where he's at, and if he's something if it's in British Isles or Germany or something like that, I'll sit and talk to him once he's done. If he's if he's in the States, maybe not. Depends on if
he's in Lisbon.
If I'm bored or whatever. If he's in Lisbon, I don't know that I'd talk to that.
That's interesting, and I'll tell you why some of the guys do that. The people that will go CQ, and it goes on and on for 2 or 3 minutes, and they keep throwing their call sign in there, and they'll say like he did, and this is another takeaway I had. He says 20 meters when he's on 20 meters. That's unnecessary today. Now, let me tell you where that comes from. That dates back to a time when receivers were not what they are today. There were no digital receivers back in the day. Everything was analog, and it was possible to call CQ on one frequency and be heard on a variety of other frequencies that are harmonics. And that's where that CQ 20 meters, CQ 40 meters, that's where that comes from. It was
the only reason that you would change and do something like that nowadays anyway is if you're running split. If you're running, you can transmit on one frequency and say you're listening up 5 or up 3 or some, to get out of the noise. and I've heard that quite a bit. This is N8OQP. I'm on 20 meters. I'm listening up 5 for anybody that wants to talk to me, or on N8OQP listening up 5 or listening down 5, wherever you want to put your receiver at.
Well, the other thing and by the way, that particular thing that you're talking about right now, where you're going up 5 or down 5, you will always find that's the case if you go on to any of, like 2 or 3 times a year, the military will interact with civilian operators on the ham radio bands. They will always do that. If you talk to somebody on their during their field events, you will always find you have to use a split.
Well, even your repeaters do that. You don't realize that, but you're actually talking. You're actually
that plus
depending
plus
on where you're
minus,
at. You're either talking up 600 or down.
Yes, that's right.
Or on
a lot of people don't know that.
If you're on 440 or if you're on 440, the split up there is isn't that a meg? Something like that.
I've never been on 440 in my life. I can't tell you.
Then down on it varies down on 6 meters. You can be down 1,000. You can be down 5. And
we've got one net here on 6 meters in the Stark County area, and it's just on 50.4. And I join that net whenever I can. It's an AM net, which is kind of interesting. We'll talk about that some night here on the program.
Yeah.
One of the other reasons people do this CQ ad nauseum thing is because they have the expectation that someone will see them on a waterfall. And so they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk, believing that someone will come across that on the waterfall and they'll be more likely to be answered. You got to keep in mind, though, that that's okay, but there are a lot of people like me that on a 1966 Swan radio, I have no waterfall. My waterfall are my fingers to tune the dial and my ears. I can't see what you're saying. And so if somebody like me happens upon you and you're going on for 3 minutes calling CQ, I'm probably not going to answer. I'm going to go ahead and move on, like Pat said. And unless, and here's the thing too, I don't QRZ people. Now after I got that tip tonight from my Elmer, Pat Morrow, I'm going to start doing that. When I hear that going on and on, I'm going to take that call sign and I'm going to punch it in to
it works really well. That gives you another minute or two to figure out if you want to talk.
So thank you, Pat, for the nice tip.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm just here to entertain.
Hey, we've only got about 10 minutes, and I want to do this last clip real quick because this guy's hilarious. And it just, I don't know, he makes my day. So I thought, since we're talking tonight about how to talk to other people and how to reach out to other people and how to start a conversation, and we've already learned, talk about radio and the weather, let's go ahead and bring Callum in, the DX commander, and let's see what he has to say about calling CQ.
All right, you're listening to the World According to Elmer on Crooked River. Be back on the other side.
So I had an email from a fellow called Matt, and he's got a 100-watt radio. No, he hasn't. I'll tell you what, he's an M6, so he's running 10 watts. And he wants to get his first contact on HF, and he's getting a bit despondent because he hasn't had one yet, poor chap. So now, this is what I suggested, and you tell me if I've got it wrong, actually, because I know he'll watch this, and he'll think, oh, that's good. Because you might have a better suggestion than me, see. So what I said, he's got a 40 and a 20-metre homebrew fan dipole. Good. And I don't know, it's not particularly high, okay, but, you know, let's say it's 7, 8, 9 meters, which is 27-ish feet, give or take. And he's calling CQ. Now, what I said to him is that try a busy time. So, for instance, Saturday mornings. Now, from the UK, sometime during Saturday, there's normally a bit of propagation to, let's say, Germany. There's a lot of German souls out there who are on a radio. Now, he can either answer a CQ call or he can call CQ, because in amateur radio, when you want your first contact, any contact, we do that by calling CQ, which is the old French expression of sécurité, sécurité, which is the international postal language. And I'll put a link up here if you're interested in following that, because I did another film about CQ, but this is particularly for Matt. So what I said is you need to be very precise. So I'll play with the EQ when I do this, okay? So it sounds like I'm on the radio, but you need to go, hello, CQ, CQ. This is M6 Alpha Bravo Charlie. M6 Alpha Bravo Charlie calling CQ, CQ. Over. Wait 5, 10, do it again. CQ, and it's about to do it all over again. And prepare to do that for 15 minutes. That's what I said. Maybe certainly 10. With his 10 watts. And now then, let's say eventually someone comes back to him. We need to get in our mind how we're going to have this first contact, don't we? So I have in my head, and you might want to scribble these down, a few stock things to say. And don't, particularly when you start, do not, unless you're running high power, don't assume that we're going to be doing long overs here. These are short and snappy. So we're going to have Delta Kilo 1 Alpha Bravo Charlie return. DK1 Alpha Bravo Charlie. DK1 ABC. Thanks for calling. You've looked at the S meter while he called you and it said S8. DK1 ABC, thank you for calling. You're 5 and 8, 58 here in Birmingham or Norwich or London or Glasgow, wherever you are. My name is John. Juliet Ocean November or Oscar November, using the alternative phonetic there, which I don't approve of. Back to you. So, signal report, my name, where I am. Back to you. DK1 ABC, M6 ABC. Over. Whew, that's it. He'll probably replicate you. He'll probably copy what you've just done. Hello, John. My name is Hans. I'm in Dusseldorf. You're also 57, 58. Nice to meet you. And now he's got to come up with something. So very often he'll say, running 50 watts here, dipole, 8 meters, weather, sunny, rain, snow, whatever. Nice to meet you, John. He'll go back to you. M6 ABC, Delta Kilo 1 ABC. Okay, Hans, thank you very much. Nice to put you in the log. Have a nice weekend. Thank you for the contact. DK1 ABC, M6 ABC, over. And then he'll get his third go then, won't he? Oh, yes, lovely. Nice to meet you, John. Have a good weekend yourself. Thank you for the contact. See you next time, maybe 20 meters. Bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye, Hans. Over and out. Whatever you want to say. Now, he might have helped you create a bit more interest in that frequency. So prepare to call a couple of CQs again and maybe get a caller. Anyway, the advice I was giving him was try a weekend, not like a Wednesday afternoon when there's nobody about. If you try a weekend, sit all day at your radio if necessary. Try and work out where the propagations. I spoke to a guy the other day. He was only about S7, S8, and but he was running 800 watts, and he apparently could barely hear my 100. So maybe propagation's off. Try 40. Next day, try 20. Okay, because you might find there'll be a little gap somewhere, and you're getting into Finland, or you're getting into Cyprus, or you get across the Atlantic, or wherever. Okay, so that's the tip for today. And now I haven't got the time now. Just about to have my hair bleached. It's the family thing. There's a long story about getting my hair bleached once a year, and I'll tell you that next time. But little tip. That's how I did it. I had a couple of stock things in front. I had a way of running the QSO and bailing out fairly rapidly. Now, if he's a nice guy and he asks you lots of questions, by all means engage. But that gives you a little stock contact on SSB. All right, so my name's Callum. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe. A lot of people think they're subscribed, and YouTube serve up my adverts, my videos, but in fact they're not subscribed, and YouTube could stop serving them up one day, and you'll kind of lose track, and that would be a shame because it's nice to meet you. So remember to hit the subscribe button bottom right if you're using a PC or somewhere, some bottom right I think it is, on a phone or a mobile. So all the best now. Cheers and beers.
Right. Cheers and beers. There we go. That's the DX Commander. And I just love the way that he boils things down. That is so simple. How are we going to make this first QSL? Well, we're just going to keep calling CQ with our 10-watt transmitter until somebody answers us, and we're going to get some guy in Germany. The same thing you said earlier in the show. So apparently Germany is very fluent on the bands.
That's probably one of the easier ones as far as contact-wise.
He was talking to Hans, and so there you go. You know, don't be one of these people that says, there's nobody out there. I listen all day long, and there is no one on the bands. I am so sick of hearing that. This is a rant alert. Don't be that guy that does that. Pick the microphone up and say hello. Don't assume that there's nobody on the bands. If you don't reach out to someone, they don't know that you're sitting in your house and you've been sitting there all day long listening to that radio. No one has ESP. You have to pick the microphone up and you have to talk in order to receive a reply. End of rant.
This is not
Don't be that guy.
This is not a Pink Floyd song. You don't look and say, hello, is there anybody in there? Just nod if you can hear me. Is there anyone at home? We have too much fun with it, Gerry.
Oh, this is great. Don't be that guy, Stephen.
Yeah, don't be that guy.
You have plenty to talk about, my friend. You listed 20 different topics that you're fluent in. For goodness sakes, I'll talk to you. Reach out. I'll talk to you on the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club repeater. Just throw your name out there and say you're listening. You and I'll talk about all those different musical instruments that you play. We'll talk about everything that you listed on that email or that post that you made on social media. Folks, there's plenty of people to talk about. One of these days,
talk about and talk to too.
Well, you know what? That's how we became friends. If we weren't on the radio talking, I wouldn't know Pat, and Pat wouldn't know me, and so you'll be surprised the friendships that you'll make and the people that you'll come to know in radio if you just open the mic and say something. The other thing is if you're on a repeater, bear in mind what repeater you're on, because if you're talking on the Cuyahoga Falls repeater, as an example, in Akron, Ohio, you're going to get on there and say, this is KG8RRY, I'm listening, and just leave it at that. Someone will reply to you. You're going to start talking to club guys and club gals that frequent that repeater, and that takes you to your next logical step. Your next logical step is to join the local club. And when you join the local club, you're going to find that you'll make lifelong friends. You'll make people that are meet people that are interested in the things that you're interested in. And there's a whole world of good that happens when you get involved with your local club. So I want to be encouraging tonight to you to not only pick the mic up and begin to talk, but also get with your local club, join. You know, the dues are $10, $15, whatever they are for that particular club. The price of a cup of coffee or two at Starbucks, those will pay your dues for the year. And the good that will come out of that club is amazing. So that's another way that you can start to meet people. And once you meet people at the club meetings, then you'll have other people to talk to on the radio. And so the whole cycle replicates itself over and over again. It's good stuff.
And on the off chance that you don't have your license yet, I got an opportunity for you. There is a class that we're doing coming up that's going to be all virtual, all on the internet. If you want to join this, it starts next Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and there will be, I think, 5 of us teaching it. They already have several people that have signed up for it. It's going to be a kind of a worldwide class. There's going to be people from all over the country in it. It will, if you want information about this, go to the Cuyahoga Falls Amateur Radio Club, or CFARC.org, and there's information about the classes on there. They start October 10th, 1 p.m. Eastern, and you have to get the book, and I don't think that there's any actual fees. And I believe at the end of it, they're probably going to do a don't quote me on this, but in the past they've done virtual testing, so keep that in mind. If you're looking to get into the first steps of amateur radio, that's the grand way to do it. You can ask questions. You don't even have to leave your house. So if you get a chance, you should, like I said, get a hold of or go to this CFARC.org. and look for the information on classes. We got a really cool looking website.
You can go to ham radio school in your pajamas now, Pat.
Yep, and I can teach in my pajamas just like this.
It is all good. That's awesome. CFARC, CFARC.org. Get enrolled in the class. And if you know somebody that wants to become a ham radio operator, and they don't know what direction to go, there you go. Pass that along to them. They'll appreciate it. Well, Pat, we're out of time, buddy.
Darn. We just started this, 10 minutes ago?
It seems like about 1 minute ago we started the program, and it's already over. Next week, no original program. I will be on my 40th wedding anniversary down in West Virginia. We are going to be down in the Blue Ridge Mountains, as deep in the mountains as we can get. There won't be anybody that can reach us. It's going to be awesome. But the week following, we'll be back.
Okay, so we're off for 2 weeks or 1 week.
No, just 1 week. Okay. Just off for next week.
All right, that's news to me too.
I thought I would share that with you, Pat.
You learn. You hear it here first.
Exactly. Thank you for listening to The World According to Elmer. I'm Gerry, KG8RRY. That is Pat, our Elmer. He is N8OQP, and you are you. And we're glad you're here because you're what makes the program work. Have a great week. Get on the bands. Get out on the bands. Pick the microphone up. Make some CQ calls.
7-3, everybody.
73.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. See you again soon.
Crooked River Flashback. Crooked River Flashback. Crooked River Flashback. Crooked River Flashback.